Joanna's life has been incredibly difficult and unpredictable from the start, after the girl's mother suffered a heart attack when Joanna was just 5 years old. She had to live with her alcoholic stepfather for about 2 years. Unfortunately, the man never cared about the girl. It's hard to say what the girl's life would have been like if it weren't for the neighbors who called social services. Needless to say, the frightened child caused quite a stir among social workers. She had the look of a hunted animal that has been caught in a trap. Meanwhile, Joanna's stepfather was so drunk that he couldn't even talk to social workers when they asked him to explain why the house was in such a mess. Instead, the man just brushed them away like they were some annoying flies and walked into another room shaking his head from side to side. Thus, the irresponsible alcoholic behavior sealed Joanna's fate in the coming years, forcing her to live in an orphanage. It was very difficult for the girl to adapt to living in an unknown world at first. But then, thanks to the skilled help of the caretakers, little Joanna felt like she was part of a big, friendly family. Time flew quickly at the orphanage, and Joanna didn't even notice when she became a young adult. Saying goodbye to her dear caregivers, the young woman entered the adult world where she should now find her place. At first, Joanna resolved the housing issue, as she received a small house on the outskirts of the city from a fund to help orphans. Unfortunately, the neighborhood she ended up living in could hardly be called safe, but the young woman had no choice. Thus, she humbly accepted whatever fate threw at her. At that moment that Joanna had her own house, she could finally start looking for a job. Unfortunately, it turned out to be much more difficult than the young woman with no experience or any specific skills had anticipated. Going from office to office, Joanna was rejected several times. And when she was already feeling hopeless, luck smiled on her. And it came in the form of a gas station owner, Pedro. "Yes, I'm really looking for help. And a young woman as pretty as you would be perfect for the job," the gas station owner said with a smirk. "Thank you, sir. I would be very grateful for any work," Joanna replied. The girl felt as if she were being watched from head to toe. Pedro was a middle-aged man who never missed an opportunity with a woman and was proud to have broken at least a few dozen women's hearts. Therefore, when the womanizers saw Joanna in his office, he already knew that the interview was just a formality. He was definitely hiring the beautiful woman. Peter had his own thinking behind such a decision. But the unsuspecting Joanna was overjoyed to get the job at the gas station, which seemed like the best place in the world for her and other young women. Anna, a cashier who worked at the gas station along with Maria and Rose, had been friends since school. The friends liked Joanna and were happy to accept the new employee in their circle of friends. In addition, the friends always together, occasionally committed some kind of scam when refueling the car. Because of this, they always had some extra money in their pockets. One day, Maria even got up the courage and offered Joanna to join the scheme. But the orphan rejected the offer. "Well, that's too bad. After all, customers don't even notice, and you'd earn some extra money." "I'm sure you could put the money to good use," said Maria, disappointed. Joanna just smiled shyly in response and shrugged her shoulders. Even though she grew up without her parents, the idea of stealing and cheating on customers made her uncomfortable. In addition, Joanna was used to living modestly and was satisfied with the salary she received at the gas station. Unfortunately, the young woman didn't know it yet, but Pedro had his eye on her for a long time and was just waiting for the opportune moment to get what he wanted. To achieve your goal. The unpleasant gas station owner used every pretext to approach Joanna, touching her hand, hugging her around the waist, and even making dirty jokes. "Peter, I'm sorry, but your jokes are making me uncomfortable," said the young woman after escaping the inconvenient man's groping hands once again. "You can try to avoid me all you want, but I'll still get what I want. You didn't think you got this job for nothing, did you?" Pedro said and smoothed his hair. Maria and Rose, who overheard the conversation, laughed approvingly in response to the despicable man's comment. The two, who knew their boss's preferences well and never resisted him, allowed themselves to be treated in this disrespectful way. Joanna could barely contain her tears, and it took a huge effort to compose herself, barely managing to control herself until the end of the workday. So at the end of the day, the girl took off her hated overalls and ran home. Passing by some garbage cans, Joanna heard a strange grunt. The young woman stopped and looked around. So, having identified the source of the sound, she lifted the empty cardboard box and saw a small kitten underneath. "How did you get there?" he exclaimed and took the kitten in his arms. Realizing that the kitten would simply die without shelter and food, Joanna took him home, after feeding the little puppy with milk. Soon, he decided to call him Tom and pay homage to the character of his favorite cartoon. Now, when Joanna came home from work, she was always greeted by a cutie who loved his owner more than anything else in the world. These moments made the girl's heart rejoice. Even Peter's incessant harassment didn't seem so bad anymore. The inconvenience did not give Joanna a minute of peace for about a month. And then something happened that changed everything. The fact is that the gas station's profit had been decreasing in recent months, which made Pedro very angry. "If it continues like this, I'll probably end up having to sell the gas station, so maybe you should start looking for new jobs," said the owner, referring mainly to his two favorite employees, Maria and Rose. Joanna accidentally heard that the potential buyer of the gas station was a serious man who made his fortune in a hotel chain. The young woman really didn't care who the new owner of the establishment would be, as she was a good and honest employee. And these people can adapt to any boss, and new conditions are easier than others. But Maria and Rose were very worried, as they realized that they might have to give up their illegal income from unaccounted for gasoline sales, and that thought terrified them. Once, at the height of the workday, a cheap old Chevrolet pulled into the gas station. The car looked so bad it obviously belonged in a landfill. A frail old man sat behind the wheel of this relic of the past. He was wearing shabby clothes and a football cap. "Another beggar now, will fill up with a couple of liters of gasoline just to get home," Maria said sarcastically. But, as it turned out, the old man had no money, not even for a few liters of gasoline. "Miss, could you help me, please? The fact is, I forgot my wallet at home. And I don't have enough gas to go back to get her," the old man asked, a little embarrassed, playing with his cap in his hands. "I know you are kind. You beggars beg for food and alms in the streets. And then you come here and beg for gas too. That's an easy way to live life. Get out of here before I call the police," Rose replied bluntly. "Why would you do that?" asked the old man. "I'm just asking for a loan. I need to get to the airport. My son is arriving today, and I haven't seen him in many years. Here, I have a wedding ring. You can take it. I don't need any more. I have been a widower for 7 years." The old man stopped sobbing and began to take the ring off his finger. Seeing the situation, Joanna felt a wave of sympathy for the old man who was willing to humiliate himself for a few liters of gasoline. "Stop it, sir. I believe and I will help. I will put the gas you need." "You don't need a ring," Joanna said, and started to unscrew the tank cap from the old man's Chevrolet. Meanwhile, Maria and Rose exchanged a knowing look and rushed to the phone quickly to report this to Pedro. In fact, Joanna didn't even care about being handed over to the boss by her coworkers. She filled the man's tank and wrote down the total amount to be deducted from her own salary. But as soon as the old man got out of the gas station, the owner ran in and his face was distorted with rage. "Who do you think Joan is? You may have forgotten, but I still own this gas station. I still make the decisions here. And I don't allow anyone to give away free gasoline," Pedro started to scream. "I understand, sir. But I made a note for this amount to come out of my salary," Joanna spoke softly. In response, the owner of the gas station simply pointed his finger at the door to the employee, saying, "She is fired." Joanna wiped away a tear and gathered her things. There was no way the unfortunate orphan could have predicted such a turn of events. And now she was very sad and was punished for her kindness. Can you imagine the gas station employee's surprise when the same Chevrolet returned about an hour later? Only now there was a young man in a suit and sunglasses driving, and the poor old man was sitting in the passenger seat. Joanna was holding the few personal effects she had and was about to leave when the old man came running towards our miss. "Here's the money. My name is George. And that handsome man with the glasses is my son Italo. Thank you so much for your help. If it weren't for you, I would have been late picking up my son. But thanks to you, I arrived on time. He's been away for a long time, but now he's decided to come home." The elderly man explained by holding out the money. "Thank you very much. But if you don't mind, give this money to the cashier, as I no longer work at this establishment." "I just got fired," Joanna replied with an embarrassed smile. "What do you mean fired? Who fired you?" "They had no right. I have already made the first payment for the purchase of this gas station. And as agreed, after paying the full amount, I will become the rightful owner." "Mr. Italo, is that you?" "I didn't even know this man was his father." Pedro tried to justify himself, but George was angry and there was no way to stop him. The businessman immediately called his manager and instructed him to make the final transfer, thus paying the full price of the post and becoming the rightful owner on the spot. Then George made an announcement that he was now the new owner of this gas station. Upon hearing his words, Joanna's face lit up with a sweet smile, which made the orphan even more beautiful. Pedro felt very embarrassed and decided to leave. He understood perfectly well that from now on he would not be welcome at this gas station. A month has passed. Maria and Rose quickly learned the new rules and abandoned the illegal scheme, having understood that theft would no longer be tolerated. But Joanna was the one who was most surprised by the changes implemented by the new owner, putting her in charge of his entire network of gas stations throughout the city. Also, Italo's father George often visits the young woman and doesn't let anyone else fill his Chevrolet. The old man treats Joanna like a daughter, and deep down he dreams that she starts dating his son Italo. The girl always blushes to the roots of her hair and smiles shyly at such a suggestion, which gives George good reason to believe that his dreams could come true one day. Well, that was Joanna's story. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and this other video that is appearing on the screen now will probably make you emotional too. Good session, and until the next video.